Yes, folks, we are back. We are back for another long, enduring segment of Hitting the Hard Court. I'm your host, JT. Um, Joining with me on the show today, we got a couple of guys. You know them, they're regulars. No need for name dropping or name calling, but guys, say what's up to the crowd.
Sup?
What's up? I finally have a picture. Put a picture of my dog up. Shout out to
Oh,
him. I haven't seen him in like a year, so
oh, a little nostalgia there. I mean,
yeah.
considering that the entire time all we've had from Flans was this nice blue square and a person inside. So we're actually gonna we're actually gonna get a face for once since we've stopped doing video on these segments. Yeah, we've had a long hiatus in between last month and this month. Given for those of you that are living in flood areas, we've been flooded. There's been huge weather changes. We had Valentine's Day, so a lot of things happen to round out the month of February, and it is my favorite month because, and we may get into this a little bit more, but March is come around, and we don't do college basketball at all. But somehow, some way, I'm going to try to fit it in because it is also the month I was born in. For those of you that actually listen in and decide to give me a gift, whether that be more broadcasting equipment, funding, or just a complete middle finger, that would be greatly appreciated. But whatever the case may be, yeah, February has ended, but a lot of great basketball has been played and a lot of great news. And we want to start out by talking about the past trade deadline and everything that has happened and what the NBA looks like as far as perspective now going into the month of March and April. So, guys, um, let's talk real quick. Recap. Want to talk about the DeMarcus Cousins trade on literally right after the All-Star game to New Orleans. And um, how big was that in comparison to essentially any other trade in the league? Possibly, I don't know what to compare that to. How big of a trade was that for on your scale?
Yeah, it's a big trade. It's probably 9 out of 10 if we're just given trades numbers here, because the best center moved, not out of conference, but he did move, or at least best offensive center in my mind, and he went and joined the best defensive. I don't know what you want to call him, 4 or 5, the best defensive big in the league. Yet somehow the Pelicans are still garbage. So I mean, the outcome of that trade is not much other than that Vlad might lose his job because he rested it on the fact that if this trade doesn't work out, he's going to resign. But the Pelicans are still pretty damn bad for having the two best big men in their conference.
I've seen teams get collectively worse after some big move has been made, but it's usually after you remove a piece, i.e., the Lakers. Um, I've I mean, as the team continues to lose, I'm gonna have to start putting them more in the 6 or 7 range. Fonz, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like it's not a short-term move. Definitely, I think it's more of a long-term move. Like you have, um, like look at the roster. No matter unless they added two forwards, well, two wings, and the Marcus, they wouldn't have gotten a lot better. It's like they're starting Solomon Hill. What like what kind of good to decent NBA team would start Solomon Hill? I think this is more they jumped on the opportunity. They knew that they could fleece Vivek because he loves Buddy Hield for some goddamn reason, and they're like, hey, okay, so the Cousins is available. Let's get him. Let's pair him up with AD. Let's get that time frame going. The time for adjustment, and then the summer, for free agents, like even decent 3 and D wings. I don't know who's going to be a free agent, but like if you're a 3 and D wing and you're like, do I want to go sign with some other team, or do I want to go with a team that has two of the best players in the league, two of the top 15 players.
If we were doing
And there's Drew Holiday. Don't forget that.
if this were one of your fantasy leagues, like say if we were doing daily fantasy and you were to compare this team to any type of team or the way that it's built now, New Orleans reminds me of that guy that really loves a couple of stars, doesn't realize, hey, he has a limited amount of cap space when he's purchasing these players for the day, takes all his money because he thinks he has a limited amount of space, picks these two guys. He looks around like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm getting these guys, goes to pick the next guy and then forgets that he has a cap. And now he's stuck with three other guys that are worth $5 or less because he spent basically his entire cap salary. That's what this team reminds me of. Oh, I hope these guys will go off, but they probably won't. And I'm going to have to depend on twice the amount of star power from these two guys that I picked up.
Yeah, no, it was just it's a low win move, but it's a high press move.
Plus I think it's just more of the why not get the talent when the talent is available, right?
This is true.
It's like, oh, cool, like we could get fucking, Boogie Cousins for Buddy Hield. Who wouldn't take that deal?
I'm sure that all kinds of teams were looking at this and saying, you're trading Boogie and you're one game out of the 8th seed for the playoffs, and you're trading Boogie. Screw it. That's one of those, hey, this guy was telling a joke at the bar and he said something about trading DeMarcus Cousins, and I was laughing at him, thinking that he was drunk because, we both had a couple of shots. And then he looked at me deadpan in the face and said, I'm seriously considering trading Cousins. And you kind of look around at the bottom of your glass, making sure no one slipped anything in it, because you're looking back at this guy like he must be fucking nuts. I will take that trade, and I want to make sure that this is not one of those, hey, I'm going to regret sleeping with this person because I'm going to wake up in the morning and realize I got the Loch Ness Monster in my bed. But if I wake up and this is not fool's gold, he's not kidding me, this might be the best thing ever. And the fact that he was already in New Orleans probably made it an even crazier press situation.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the trade, if we're gonna take that analogy, so it's like, you know what, I've got Jessica Biel here, but you know what I'm gonna walk away with is Willie Cauley-Stein. That's all we really need is Willie Cauley-Stein. If Willie Cauley-Stein's in the bed next to me in the morning, it doesn't matter who else we have.
Yeah, it's and then from the other side, I mean, it had to happen sometime. The timing was, for me, was very poor. Because when you're this is just speaking from the Lakers fan base perspective, and probably more from a player's perspective, when you are not necessarily wheeling and dealing, but you have the possibility to get your team back into the playoffs. You're basically rewarding your fans for saying, hey, thank you for dealing with all the crap that the Maloof brothers and I have put you through for the past 4 seasons. We're finally going to be back for a longer season. And then to come back and say, just kidding, you got Arco gas. Sorry, fans at Arco Arena. I think that it was just really poor taste, and they're still in contention for a playoff spot, which is the sad part about it. New Orleans is sort of hovering there, but the Sacramento is still in playoff contention. So if you think about it, if they go on some sort of weird I'm trying to think of a team to compare this to. If they go on the Cinderella story, sort of like Butler did in the NCAA years ago. Told you I was going to fit it in. And they end up somehow in the playoffs. I think just being in the playoffs would be so much more of an icing on the cake to say, yeah, we traded away our best player and still made playoffs. Catch me outside. How about that?
I mean,
yeah,
when you
I think the Nuggets are going to get in the playoffs
I
ahead
mean,
of
we're
the
talking
Kings.
fantasy here,
Yeah,
not reality. I mean, reality, Denver's definitely a
yeah,
shoo-in for. We
but also
hope
like
that
just a random question for the two of you: would you
yeah.
rather be a Knicks fan or a Kings fan for the next 5 years?
I think if we're just trashing Mike solely here, I think we got to trash Mike here and say a Knicks fan.
I would like to. Oh my God, you sure cutting my wrist isn't a third option?
I mean,
Um,
just
I
like
mean,
because you have it's like you weigh Porzingis and like seeing his potential get wasted
okay.
versus
I
another
honestly would have
move.
to be a Knicks fan, and here's why. Because if I'm a Knicks fan, then I love things not just about the Knicks. The Knicks are sort of, or used to be, a representation of the city and the state itself. And that being said, I would rather be much more fan of the state of New York than be a fan of the city of Sacramento, because you have to be in downtown Sacramento in the small pod to enjoy some sort of part of Sacramento. Everything else outside of that sucks. People from Sacramento will tell you that. No one will tell you that out in New York. They'll just
No,
say, "Oh, we have bad teams, but we have a lot of great culture. You may have a bad basketball game, but there are 12 bars that you can go to within walking distance, and you will be totally happy to just, you know, drink it away and enjoy some time with good company around you." I would rather do that in New York than I would in Sacramento.
I think if we can circle back here to Fonz's mention of the wing players really quickly, the free agents coming up this off season. I mean, KD obviously has the player option, which he won't re-up because who's going to throw away good money? Steph
Mm-hmm.
Curry's unrestricted again out in Golden State, so he's going to re-up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if he's going to take another team-friendly deal like he did last time, but he's going to need to re-up. And then when you look across the standings there, maybe 3 or 4 seed, depending on how they play, both Blake Griffin and Chris Paul have player options, so both of them
Yes.
will re-up. And then
Yes.
you look, keeping in the West, Gordon Hayward has a player option, so he will re-up for money as he is, I don't know if you want to call him the 10 or the bottom half of the MVP ladder this year. Other side of the bottom half of the MVP ladder, Kyle Lowry may come back, may not come back. Either way, he will get max money somewhere. And I would say the same could be true for Paul Millsap, although not over five years. But those are the biggest of the free agents, and guys like Gallinari, Ibaka, Drew Holiday, and Otto Porter are unrestricted or restricted free agents. So those are guys, not Washington. Washington might want to re-sign Otto Porter, but those are guys New Orleans might look to go after.
So you're essentially saying that this is a 9 out of 10 on the scale of good trades, simply because of the fact that you have two players now. I mean, isn't Cousins almost in a contract year? Does he have one more year left on his contract?
Next year he'll be coming off of his last year for I think player option is next year.
So I mean, considering all things being considered, if they could find a way to convince Cousins, I mean, New Orleans is a great city. Um, like I said, there are a ton of cities better than Sacramento. New Orleans is definitely one of them. He got a little bit of taste there, and I want to say, hey, we got Boogie down in the Big Easy. That would be a headline there. Boogie and the Brow in the Big Easy. Copyright it. Then
Triple
you
B.
then after that, I'm not completely convinced that you can pay out all that money if you're New Orleans and have decent wing players. But when you mention a guy like Otto Porter Jr. being out there, considering how he's helped the Wizards get to the 3 seed now, I think that you could pay a guy like him and still have some cap room to save for to re-up on a Drew Holiday and then possibly get another guard out there, and then you have a better look at your wing, your starting 5 than you do now. So I mean, if that's what you're saying, then I can definitely agree with you that as a 9 out of 10, but it still always is going to depend on what happens in April. at mid-April.
And of
So
course it does, but the top 10 payrolls is nowhere near New Orleans. The bottom half of that ladder is Orlando and New York at 104 and 103. And then you look at the top and you got Cleveland at 128, which is ridiculous because the next closest is Portland at 119 in terms of player money. So New Orleans does have some room to work with. Not to say that they can go out and get KD or Chris Paul or Gordon Hayward or Kyle Lowry, but they can get somebody with the money they have spare.
And given the picks that they've traded away for that, I think that they're definitely going to have to look at free agency. So smart money, definitely with them. Let's move on from that. Let's let that stew for a minute, and let's talk about a couple other teams real quick. I always have to throw in, just because I'm a homer, the Lakers trading away Lou Williams, getting back picks, and Corey Brewer in the swing of things. And Lou Williams goes to a team in Houston that is willing and dealing right now. Definitely one of the highest field goal efficiency teams out there right now in the West. If we can get a rating on this trade, what do you guys think? As far as Houston is concerned, acquiring Lou Williams.
I don't know if it makes more sense in terms of Houston getting the veteran shooting presence that they need to go along with the veteran defensive presses that aren't James Harden. I just want to mention that the collective team defense out in Houston, that obviously is a great shooting team, but they were like, you know what, we can add one more, and maybe that'll keep our splash in there, and we'll hold the third seed, and we'll make a run at San Antonio. I think you're looking at more like a 6 or a 7 out of 10, because I mean, just the fact that Lou's going to be a free agent, was it really a smart deal to make for a Houston team that already had 40 some wins, or was it just like a rental type piece to make a real run right now?
I'd say I'd give it an 8, because I love things that embrace just how absurd they are. Like John Wick. Have you guys seen John Wick? John Wick. It's an absurd movie, and yet it just embraces it because it knows that it's stupid. It's so great.
So you like
the Rockets are just like, hey, we could get another shooter, like, for not that much. Why not? Like, they're going for it this year. So, and I'd say much rather play Lou Williams than
Corey
Sam
Brewer
Decker or Corey Brewer. Yeah,
I kind of I like to say that both teams came up with something good out of this deal. I wasn't. It's I forgot who brought it up the other day, but listening to Mike and Mike podcast on ESPN. Offensive efficiency, if you look at the shot chart, there's this nice, and I went back and checked this on stats.nba.com. You can see this shot chart where essentially the inside of the paint is red, the 3-point line is red, and there is a nice stripe from about 21 to about 15 where it's just clear. Maybe 1 or 2 shots from there, but it's amazing that this team is doing as well, because they tried this with Rudy Tomjanovich a couple years ago. They tried this when Dwight Howard's on the team, and it didn't work as well, and their 3-point shooting basically cost them the playoffs. Whereas this season, I believe that adding someone like Lou Williams, who can just take the ball on or off the dribble and score for you a lot like James Harden can. I really like the fact that you got 2 guys that can now execute from both a starting point and from a relief point when Lou Williams comes in as that 6th man. He could essentially win 6th man of the year because of this trade. He's probably going to show the people why, especially in the playoffs. And to even further your point about where they're going to be sitting at in the playoffs, I don't see them overtaking the 2 seed unless San Antonio completely falls apart or there's some sort of gamesmanship there as far as the playoffs are concerned. But Houston, I like the idea that Houston would want to try to rather go through San Antonio Actually, they would go through San Antonio either way if you really think about it. But
Yeah, they go through San Antonio no matter what happens.
they could. I like the idea, the concept that they rather not fall to the fourth seed and have to go through a team like Golden State and then have to go shot for shot versus going against a team like San Antonio where they can slow it down and execute as shown by that shot chart, but they can also say, you know what, we're going to Golden State. You're going to try and shoot 140 and just hope that you can try to catch up. We're going to sprint this mile and then just see how long you can keep up with us.
Also, can I just say that I really want the Rockets to have a lineup. I don't know if they've done this, of Harden, Ariza, Lou Williams, Ryan Anderson, Eric Gordon.
It's just 3-point
So
shooting
small.
contest is what you want?
Basically, like they just spread it out, let Harden do his thing. Just punt on defense. Just like not even go back on defense. Just like nobody
Just cherry
runs
pick?
back. They just stay in the half court.
Cherry pick, shoot.
Yeah.
I wonder if it. Well, see, that's gonna. That's interesting that you say that, and technical, actual rules speaking aside, where you can get a technical for defensive 3 seconds because you're not playing defense. But I wonder if a team would take advantage of being able to score in 3 seconds or less, other than the Cleveland Cavaliers who love the Hail Mary pass. And now Northwestern University. Fitted it again. I would like to say that would be fun to watch, but then we watched one of the younger Ball brothers who always gets this highlight, and they were talking about him scoring 90-something points in the game, and it really didn't matter because all he did was cherry pick, and then I was immediately reminded that James Harden doesn't play defense, and now this whole idea has just been soured for me. So it sounds good, but there are just so many things that I would be kicking myself for if it actually happened. And I'm sure that everyone in the league would be kicking themselves for letting it happen. And then Houston would probably get swept because teams just don't like to see that type of basketball. So no, we're not going to support that. You can support that by yourself, Fonz. You could be a man of one. I'm sure that the Houston Rockets are looking for. Will be looking for a new head coach.
Would you rather have that or 500 DeAndre free throws? You got to pick your poison.
Oh, we're gonna go on and we're gonna find a segment, and it's just gonna be a whole lot of would you rather. And
all right. If this is just a whole bunch of would you rather, we're going to stick with the trade talk, sort of, but just these signings after mentioning Derek Williams yesterday, because Josh mentioned Derek Williams yesterday as I had the Cavs and Raptors flipping back and forth, and I was like, no, Darren Williams is who you're thinking of. Flip on the game, and I see another Williams running out there. So Derek Williams, after a 10-day contract, signs out there. Now, the Cavs are going to get Bogut too here, so in terms of trades, they did absolutely nothing, but they gained Derek Williams, Darren Williams, and Andrew Bogut all through random $200,000 contracts because they have no money. And today we're hearing that Golden State is going to pick up Matt Barnes, which I'm not sure if they're paying his bail as his contract or what's going on there.
So,
but
if you were to grade the no trades there, what would you say for both Golden State and Cleveland?
I mean, Cleveland, I'd give them a little bit of a higher grade because they're struggling down the stretch here with K-Love gone. They need a spark off the bench because I hate to break it to them, but Richard Jefferson is not going to throw down on people 20 times a game like he used to. But Darren Williams, Derek Williams, those guys are scrappy. They're veterans. They know what they're doing. Andrew Bogut's a veteran big. He's got a title. I'm not really sure what to think about Matt Barnes quite yet because we need to wait to see what he gets arrested for next. But Golden State really didn't need to do anything until KD went down, which was a little bit out of sight. But now that he is down, they're going to be fine realistically. They didn't really need to do much. They only need Matt as long as KD's out, which I doubt is the remainder of the playoffs, if even the beginning of the playoffs.
Fonz?
I mean, See, the thing with the Cavs is that it's really stupid that they were able to get they're not great guys, they're not as good as Serge Ibaka and PJ Tucker, but they're decent NBA players. They can still contribute in some way. It's not like they're signing Joel Anthony, you know. Um, so I feel like it's kind of a dumb rule that the Raptors have to give up so much in terms of like Terrence Ross and all that and the picks and stuff to get two players who will help them in the playoffs. The Cavs can just like sit back and let the fact that they're a good team drive them and like attract them, make them attractive to guys like Darren Williams and Andrew Bogut who are looking for rings to
Well,
pad their careers.
well, I mean, to counter that point, you have two things going for you if you're the Cavs. You have LeBron James, arguably this era's Michael Jordan. He is the player of this era. Point blank and simple. The second thing is rings. I mean, the Lakers used to do it all the time. They didn't make huge trades. They would sit back. They would call one or two people up off from the D League. They would draft guys, make them the 15th man, let them sit for a little bit. Guys like Adam Morrison who just got to sit back and collect the ring. I mean, if you win a championship, which is always the criteria for trying to make players pander to you, and then you have the best player in the league at that time, you don't have to do anything. You should be able to say, you should be able to have your doors shut, locked tight, and have players banging on your gym door for hours on end, like wanting to get into the Shaolin Temple. How patient can you be to get in the door? And then finally, when your name is called, then they'll say, okay, we'll sign you for a temporary deal.
Yeah, but
I like the fact that
I just feel
go
like
ahead.
there is a reason why there are like time for free agents to sign with teams. You know, like why is it that like it's like in once again bringing up fantasy, it's like in a fantasy basketball or any fantasy league, like how weird would it be if like okay, like my team's in first place, your team's in second place, and then some other guy like then you have the scrubs in last place, and then like the scrubs that go to first round picks, and then I pick them up and get even better. Like, is that fair? No.
That's
Yeah,
how
I
the
mean,
league is.
Yeah,
it's
that's what
just
the
how it
league is. It's
is.
kind of weird and
Just
frustrating.
that's just how the league is. It's frustrating, but it's frustrating. But to say that it's unfair is to say that there is some team out there trying to they're skewing the rules. And the fact of the matter is that the players have created these rules, not the teams themselves, but the players have created this team. I mean, we're getting off topic here, but to counter your point, to say that Toronto essentially has to solve the Rubik's Cube in order to try to keep and maintain and build, whereas all Cleveland has to do is push a button, is simply because of the system that the players have set up. And so, yes, it's frustrating, but in its scheme and in the mechanics in and of itself that have been created by the players, it's fair.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, it is
It's
fair.
fair.
If we're just jumping back to trades real quick here, Fonz did mention
Yeah.
my Raptors. They did pick up Serge Ibaka, who said he
Yes.
will resign, which I don't know if this is
Really?
one of those
So,
Chris Bosh, I will resign, but just kidding, I'm going to Miami, resign, or if it's like, you know what, Masai's got ties to me, so I'm going to hang around here for a little
It
while.
sounds it sounds a little bit more like they found a way to utilize him. And I hear Toronto's a great city to be in.
Which it
Especially,
is, especially as an international guy.
and so I think that when you're someone like Serge Ibaka with his background and his international background and his acumen, you're going to fall in love with a place like Toronto. And I think that it's not going to be a sort of a Bosch thing where I all of a sudden found a sweeter deal. I think he's looking at it right now and saying this looks like a great fit right now. We may not be the Cleveland Cavaliers or the Golden State Warriors, but we're doing pretty damn good. And the way that these guys are using me, I feel a lot freer being in this system right now. So I'm putting this at like a 95% assured rate that he'll be back.
Which is what I was feeling. And then you jump to the other side of the deal they made for PJ Tucker, who is the scrapper on your team that every team needs to win. I mean, Cleveland has Tristan Thompson. Golden State has, to an extent, Draymond Green, depending on how many nuts get busted while he's doing it. And now they got Matt Barnes to join in on that fun. But Tucker was a good pickup. And I think if they want to make a run at Cleveland, and realistically at this point to what we're seeing, if Cleveland does not come in 100% healthy, Boston or even Washington, with what I watched yesterday, we get a rematch on Friday, obviously, with the Raptors heading into Washington. And again, no Kyle Lowry, which we don't want to talk injuries quite yet, but that's pretty devastating. DeRozan cannot pour in 40 a night, no matter how hard he tries, which, I mean, it seems pretty likely at this point that if Lowry's out, that DeRozan will just continue to pour in 40 a night, but that's more of our utopia dream than our realistic expectation of him.
But then we'd be talking about Boston, wouldn't we?
Yeah, we would. Boston has IT. I think they didn't really make a deadline deal, which I think was a mistake for them.
Essentially, you were talking about one person doing it all, and oddly enough, it's not one person doing it all in Boston if you really dig into it, but one person is doing it all for them. And I think you're right when you compare the two teams to Toronto and Boston. Toronto did beat Boston.
Yeah, they did. And I think when you say one guy doing it all, when it comes down to the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, one guy does it all. It doesn't matter what happens in the first three quarters. When Isaiah Thomas scores 20 points in the last 2 minutes, that's your team right there. Kelly Olynyk isn't going to go off for 20 points in the last 2 minutes. Marcus Smart isn't going to go off for 30 points in the fourth quarter. So, I mean, if you take IT out of the equation, they don't win any of those close games like they did yesterday.
So as far as like a no trade, I guess if you could put them on the list too, because Boston was so highly touted to be a team that would make a move for someone. I give them an 8 with a pass. I give them an 8 because they believe in what they're doing, and I think that everything that's been presented to them, including the Paul George, we'll talk about that at a later time. But with all the players that had been presented to them, with players that could have essentially signed with that team, they believe in what they're doing, and they believe in the direction they're being led. And they're always going to be talked about as the player that's missing that one essential piece to become a championship team. I just think that they believe more in themselves than the rest of the league does, and which is why I give them a pass with an 8 on that.
Which, I mean, believing in the team doesn't always go poorly when you have a couple of decent guys, a couple of good guys, and a couple of above average guys. But not everybody's the Pistons. So that scheme does not work out every time. But it's one that can work.
It's great that worked one time against the wrong team and my Los Angeles Lakers, who put together what was essentially that era's Golden State Warriors or Miami Heat, whichever you want to call them, with adding Gary Payton and Karl Malone, and we got demolished. Moving on. I want to go back to great games. And we'll talk more about the trade deadline, the trades when we get later into the second half. Talking injuries as they come up, but I want to talk a little bit right now about how February and we could say March as it's starting to unfold, how they've been giving us some great games. We got some great games coming up as far as some possible looks into how the playoffs will unfold. Cleveland and Boston. Cleveland goes into Boston and essentially plays what could be called a much tighter game than expected. And of course, Cleveland playing without Kevin Love. Still no J.R. Smith, I believe. And
No JR.
no JR. And I guess the best part about watching this game was when I talked to you, Mick, when we were talking about how Derek Williams was playing in the game, and you said no, Deron Williams was playing, and I said turn on the game. I want to like get a screenshot of that and then post that up as part of this podcast because I actually talked to Derek Williams with the year that he got drafted. Nice little story, a little Kobe plug here. I used to work at this facility that would host high caliber players when they come to work out of the gym. Think of it like the Hollywood of gyms per se. You know, very high rate to get in. You'd have to be some sort of mid-level executive or a huge sports star in order to get access to the club. And this guy Kobe decided to bring in several pieces from the draft that season, and one of them was Derek Williams, highly touted draft pick, and didn't have the dreads at that time, and so I could always recognize him out of a lineup. And so when I saw his jersey on the court, I was just as confused as you were, because I didn't know that A, he was no longer on the Knicks, and B, that he got picked up by the Cavs on what was actually a 10-day contract. And he was actually really efficient. He was balling out of his mind. Unfortunately for the Cavs, unfortunately for Boston, and I called this game incorrectly. I thought Cavs would take this one, but Boston came out on top, winning by 4, I believe. And did either of you guys have Boston winning this one?
I had Boston with a cheap win, and before Fonz goes, the Warriors will host the Celtics next Wednesday. So that's one that I think the Celtics will pull out again like they did last year, where I sat at home running late for whatever it was last year. But every time I tried to turn the TV off, what happens? Isaiah Thomas comes down the lane, he scores, and we're going to overtime, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what is with the Warriors right now? A team that can win 73 games but can't put away this little 5'6" punt. So I think Wednesday he's going to go in there and embarrass them again.
Fonz, did you? Wow, wow! Did you have Boston winning this one?
I mean, I always cheer for the team playing against the Cavs because fuck the Cavs. You know, like in every sport, there's like one team I don't like. You know, it's like for football, it's the Patriots.
Yes.
For baseball,
the Yankees.
Well, there's not. Well, for baseball, it's the Dodgers because I'm a Giants fan.
Okay.
And you know, for soccer, it's Chelsea. You know.
Okay.
And in basketball, it's the Cavs. Like I can like, like I can like find a reason to like every other team. You know, even like the Lakers. You know, I'll just be like, you know, they're fun and the yellow and purple, great color scheme. But with the Cavs, it's just nothing. It's just like the wine red's like kind of an ugly color. The jerseys are ugly. LeBron. I mean, I respect LeBron. Like,
see, I thought you were gonna go down the line. You were gonna say the jerseys are ugly, the city is ugly, LeBron is ugly.
I can't say anything about the city or the people because I've never met anyone from Cleveland and I've never been to Cleveland. But you know, so you know, it's just what I know about the Cavs, the Cavaliers. I'm limiting it to the Cavs only. So yeah, you know, I wanted Boston to win. You know, and I like the Celtics. You know, they're a fun team. Isaiah Thomas, you know, nice little scrappy guy, and you can't stop him. Nobody can stop him. Nobody has been able to stop him this season. It's ridiculous just how good he is. He's like, if you got every tiny guard ever, like Spud Webb, Nate Robinson, like it's been a slow evolution of tiny guards, and he's like the prime of it. Isaiah Thomas is honestly like one of the most fun players to watch in the league because it's like a guy. It's like somebody like my height. I'm 5'10". He's 5'9". Like, and he's going up against. He blocks Tristan Thompson, who's 6'11". That's fun. It's interesting. It's different, and I feel like that's something we should all appreciate with him because who knows if he'll ever be like who knows if this is his peak. Like next year, he may average, 10 points in the fourth quarter, which is great. But like this is an insane run that like may not be matched. Like this is the year of insane runs. Like you have the Westbrook triple doubles. You have Harden's insane like 15 plus rebounds and assists, and then 40 plus points, triple doubles. You have never-ending 10-day contracts like Yogi Ferrell and Derek Williams, actually getting signed, and then you have Isaiah Thomas being arguably the most fun, and exciting player to watch in the fourth quarter, and he's taking that mantle from Steph. Like Steph was that guy for a while, but now it's IT, and I hope we see this in the playoffs, just so it's more fun.
Well, let me ask you this then: if Boston goes out and then they beat the Warriors, and this will be their second meeting, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes.
This season, they go out and they beat the Warriors. How do you automatically put them as the Eastern Conference champion then?
Not automatically. Like it's a one game, small sample size, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But like it shows, that they're feisty, and if we know anything about the Celtics, is that they're a feisty team, and they're never out until they're out.
Let me sweeten the perspective for you then. You have a team in Boston who is second in Eastern Conference. However, their actual record doesn't reflect their talent against these playoff teams. 13 and 15, I believe, against teams above 500. So, yes, they beat teams that are on their schedule, but do they beat can they beat anyone when it really comes down to it? Can they beat the team? So I wonder if they beat the Warriors, does that sort of change a perspective from them being a decent playoff team to a very real threat in the East? Or does it just kind of, because I mean, I understand your sample size, but we're past the trade deadline. We're in the March. We're coming very close to playoff time. You either know who you are or you don't. I mean, no team is really figuring out their identity right now, except for teams that are playing for lottery balls. I mean, you got to kind of know after that game, right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. If it's just a weekend Warriors team, not a KD's out, and I think I give it more validity if like Horford plays well and continues to play well all the way until the end of the season, because he hasn't been that good, and if like the other guys step up and it's not just IT, because IT can beat anyone on any day. So if it's more like a Jay Crowder has a good game, Al Horford actually shows that he's as good as he was in the Hawks, then I think we'd be able to, argue more that they're capable of beating the Cavs, which I hope they do. And I think a lot of people hope they do.
I think a lot of people hope they do if they make it that far.
Well, in terms of like teams who could beat the Cavs right now, between the Wizards, Celtics, and Raptors, I'd probably go with what the standings show. Celtics probably have the best chance. Then the Raptors. Actually, no. Give me the Raptors first because of the PJ Tucker and Serge. Raptors, Celtics, Wizards.
I think the Wizards are a surprise for everybody. I don't even think Josh expected this out of John Wall and out of one man that they can attribute a lot of this winning to. And nobody knows who the hell he was probably 2 years ago in Bojan Bogdanovic, except for me, as I turned on the Nets game every time I would talk to Mr. Mike Cortez and talking about his Knicks, and I would just laugh because every team would run 4 guys on one side of the court, and Bogdanovich is over in the corner. And I'd turn to whoever's sitting next to me on the couch watching this game and say, "Who's guarding Bogdanovich?" Just kidding, nobody, because this guy can't hit a shot. And what does he do now? He shoots like 70% from behind the line after the trade deadline, which is ridiculous.
All of a sudden.
Let's go, boy.
We'll get more into the expectations of these playoff teams in the second half, but I completely agree that when we're talking about surprises, Boston is definitely number one, and then Washington for me, I'm sorry, they're not a surprise for me, but as far as a holistic perspective on those that are watching the NBA and seeing how the Wizards were doing earlier this season and did last year, yes, they can be called a surprise team as a number 2 this year. We are getting close to the end of our first half of our segment here, but I want to talk. We got some time here to talk about changes in the NBA, and Rules Commissioner came out a little bit earlier today and talked about a few changes that are coming on board. And one of them that was talked about but hasn't come yet is the introduction of L2M, which stands for last 2 minutes. For an overall 48-minute game period. And for those of you that don't know, just to give a little background, L2M, which stands for the last 2 minutes, it covers the last 2 minutes of a game in which, of course, a lot of tight games, which are close and contested. There are questionable calls, and there are so many angles that are given to certain calls that referees make. And what this account does, if you follow them on Twitter, is they recount and they go over and they review calls that were made by referees at certain moments and confirm or correct the call that was made, which for the refs themselves as being employees, and for players being part of the personnel that this directly affects, and coaches for a great perspective, they all collectively hate it. And one person in particular is actually joining us, who's on the show right now, would like to give his 2 cents about L2M, and then we'll get your perspective on L2M later. But I want to ask you, Mick, with all the changes that have gone on in the NBA, what is your take on L2M?
So if we're going to put it bluntly, L2M's like what they instituted in the MLB with the challenge, the original challenge rule, not the video replay now, but the original under protest challenge, where if there was a very close call, and this is before we have replay, a team could put something under protest and the MLB would go back and review it, and should it be deemed that the wrong call was made, or some guy was called out when he should have been safe, and so forth, the game goes back to that point and is played on again from that point to decide the proper victor. Now, obviously, in 162 games, you have the opportunity to do this a lot more than you do in the NBA. But the L2M report is nothing more than the NBA trying to get the monkey off its back. I mean, my Raptors, before the All-Star break, were where they were on the road, wherever they were. And I'm sitting at home watching the game as I do. And final shot comes up, and DeRozan gets fouled. No call, game over. And the L2M report comes out the next day. It says, you know what, DeRozan was fouled, but he didn't get the call, so that cost the Raptors a game. What the L2M report does is it tells me that he got fouled. Okay, thanks. I figured that one out. I watched the game. He got bumped on the wrist. It was pretty obvious to me. Obviously, I'm biased again, but it was pretty obvious to a lot of guys that he got bumped. No call. So then you look and you say, well, then why are they telling me this if it has no effect on the outcome of the game? Is it because they genuinely want to correct it, or is it because they need somebody to throw under the bus because they want to look high and mighty? And I think we all know the answer, because if they really cared about the referees, they would have been doing the full 48 minutes the entire time this process had been invoked. I mean, when you look at the NFL, Dean Blandino, whenever he was the chief, used to go back and review the whole game of those tight games, and he used to say, you know what, no, you messed up in the first quarter, not so much in the fourth quarter, but it did impact the game. So that's where we got to correct it. He didn't just go back at the last 2 minutes and say, did you guys see that Edelman catch? It wasn't really a catch. It didn't really affect the outcome of the game. But I mean, all that stuff that happened in the first quarter with the brawl and this and that, and all those guys getting ejected, that really did. But we're not going to review that because nobody cares about that. We only care about what happened about 5 seconds ago. That was the last second shot that was made or missed. And that's what's kind of disturbing about it, is that if the NBA was to do this report and say, you know what, DeRozan was fouled, let's go back and play the game again from that point, or, you know, let's credit the Raptors a win or whatever, that's a different story. But realistically, what happens is they're like, you know what, they lost. We made a mistake, so sorry for giving you guys a loss when you really deserved a win. We can't really do anything about it except for, you know, tell Tony Brothers he sucks. So have a good rest of the season there. We'll see you guys next weekend when we make another wrong call and need somebody else to throw under the bus. Because as an association, we don't have a fix for it, but we need to act like we do so that the fans aren't on our asses 24/7 saying, well, why is this guy getting fouled at the end of games and nobody's doing anything about it? And they're like, oh, no, you know what? We are doing something about it. When in reality, it's really just a whole session that the NBA holds to say, you know what? You can't hold us accountable. We tried to correct it as best as we could. It didn't actually do anything, but we tried. So better luck next time. I think this 48-minute report that's going to come out is actually helpful, and I think it might actually do something for the league rather than just kind of everybody sit around and say, "Oh yeah, he got fouled. Oh, congratulations, the NBA said he got fouled too," and now we're all just going to accept the result anyways.
Tell them how you really feel. I guess if I were to counter any part of that, actually, I wouldn't counter your justification. I would just simply say that I like the direction of which L2M is going, which is completely it's confirming the argument that you have at the bar with your buddy on whether something was the right call or not. If you are on both sides, if you're on one side and your buddy's on the other side, you go back and you look at L2M within those last 2 minutes, and then cool. The thing that there are 3 things also of if you look at them, why L2M is good, and it shouldn't be this huge egregious thing. If a game is decided within the last 2 minutes, then either you weren't executing properly to make it not so, or you're just playing that damn good of a team, and there's nothing you can do to put them away. The game is the game itself. B, an overall perspective, like you said, the rest of the game also matters too. So if everyone's attention span is only on the last 2 minutes, then we might as well just cut to our local broadcasting and then cut in on a game in the last 2 minutes where everyone's really paying attention. And then we'll just have 2 minutes of televised basketball versus an hour and a half. The third thing is that you're looking at this doesn't help nor hurt anything. It's only a confirmation of the affirmation of the fact that mistakes are made, period. And it's only showing that there's a human element to this game. And yes, we can get things wrong. And if you look at those 3 things, I think that it's not so bad that the L2M report exists. I mean, if the L2M existed and no one knew about it, it still wouldn't matter because you'd have the same people complaining about the same exact thing, which is the human element in a game that is only played by humans. That's all it's about. It's just about accountability of the human error. And so I don't think it's so bad. I'm not one to say, oh, yeah, the L2M is getting it right, but it doesn't take away anything for me as a fan.
I mean, it doesn't take anything away, no. Does it really give anything back? No. It's just kind of its own thing as it is for now until
Right.
It develops into something more whole. And, meaningful to either the referees or the players. Because right now, is it really even meaningful to the referees to tell them they messed up after 46 minutes?
Of course not.
I mean, No.
Of course not. No one wants to hear after the fact of working for an hour and a half, probably thousands of miles away from your family. Hey, you screwed up. You did a bad job, and you're possibly going to get your paycheck cut. No one wants to hear that. But it needs to be said because, like I said, we're all human, and there's always room for improvement. We're going to round it out actually with that for this first half of the full court session of Hitting the Hardcourt, and then we'll be back in about 5 minutes with the second half to talk playoffs. Yes, we're talking about playoffs. Some great games and the injury bug we're going to be rounding out today, and how it's going to affect teams that are going to be in the playoffs and possibly headed to the playoffs, where they're sitting at now, what they can do to help themselves get there. We'll be seeing you guys in just about a few minutes.